The day I bought the house should have been a celebration, the kind of moment people frame in their memories forever. I had worked for years, quietly, tirelessly, saving every spare dollar, taking extra shifts, sacrificing vacations, hobbies, and even sleep just to make it possible. When the real estate agent handed me the keys, I felt something I had never felt before, a sense of arrival. Not because of the house itself, but because I had proven to myself that I could build something without relying on anyone. It was my achievement, my milestone, my long-awaited breath of air after years of drowning under expectations. So naturally, the first people I wanted to share the news with were my parents. I imagined their faces breaking into smiles, my mother clasping her hands proudly, my father giving me a nod filled with unspoken admiration. I even printed photos of the house, the front porch, the sunlight in the living room, the little patch of garden that reminded me of childhood. I wanted them to see it all. I wanted them to be proud of me, maybe for once. But when I stepped into their living room that rainy Thursday, I knew immediately something was wrong. The air was thick, heavy, almost brittle. My father sat stiffly on the couch, arms crossed, eyes narrowed as if he had been waiting for me with rehearsed anger. My mother stood by the window with a strange, rigid posture. She didn't smile. She didn't even greet me. And then, from the hallway, my sister appeared, her chin raised, her expression carrying a smugness she didn't bother hiding. I hadn't even opened my mouth when my mother gestured sharply toward the armchair. "Sit. We need to discuss the house you purchased." The tone wasn't concerned or curious. It was accusatory. I froze for a moment, then slowly took a seat, still holding the envelope with printed house photos. I tried to laugh it off. "Discuss. I just thought you'd want to see it." My father leaned forward. "We want to know why you bought that house." His voice was tight, controlled, and cutting in a way I had never heard directed at me. Not even in childhood when I made mistakes. My heart thudded uneasily. Why? Because I liked it. Because I could finally afford it. My sister scoffed and crossed her arms. "You know very well that house should have been mine." I stared at her, genuinely confused. "What? How?" She exchanged a look with my parents that made me feel like an intruder in my own family. My mother walked over to the coffee table and dropped a stack of documents onto it. Legal papers. Court papers. "We are taking you to court," she said coldly. "You've interfered with property that was intended for your sister's future." I blinked, my mind scrambling to process her words. "You're taking me to court for buying my own house." "It wasn't yours to buy," my father said. "We had plans, family plans. You knew the next property was supposed to go to your sister." "I didn't know anything," I whispered. My voice wavered despite my attempt to steady it. "You never told me anything about this." My sister stepped forward, wearing the exact entitled look I had seen my entire life. "You always ruin things. You always take what's meant for me, and this time you won't get away with it." Her comment sliced deeper than I expected. Childhood memories rose, moments where I stood aside, moments where I was told to be understanding because she was more sensitive, more deserving, the one with potential. I had swallowed all of that. I had taken it quietly, thinking that one day I'd earn my place in this family. But now they were accusing me of stealing. My mother crossed her arms and said, "We've already started the legal process. You'll be served soon." It felt like something inside me cracked. A slow, painful fracture. I had come to share joy. They handed me betrayal. And in that suffocating living room, I realized I had never really belonged. Not to them, not to their plans, not to their definition of family. The court summons arrived 3 days later, printed on stiff paper that felt heavier than it should have. I held it in my hands for a long time, staring at the words as if they were written in a foreign language. My parents' names, my own parents, stood boldly beside the word plaintiffs. My name followed, labeled defendant. It felt surreal, like some twisted joke I didn't understand. But it wasn't a joke. It was the culmination of years of silent wounds, favoritism, and unspoken rules that had shaped my entire life. Now, all of it was being dragged into the glaring white light of a courtroom. The morning of the hearing, I arrived early. I sat on a hard wooden bench, listening to the echo of footsteps in the hallway. My palms were damp, but my mind was strangely still. Fear used to be my first instinct around my family, but this time something else simmered quietly beneath the surface. Clarity. A sharp awareness of how long I had been expected to remain small so others could feel big. When the doors opened, my parents walked in with the stiff posture of people who believed they were absolutely right. My mother held a thick folder to her chest, as if it contained the irrefutable proof of my betrayal. My father avoided my gaze, his jaw locked. And then came my sister, hair styled perfectly, makeup flawless, wearing an expression of fragile injury that she had mastered since childhood. She sat between them like royalty flanked by loyal advisors. She didn't even look at me. I realized she didn't need to. In her mind, she had already won. Their lawyer stood confidently, a tall man with a polished voice, as if he had spent the entire night rehearsing the story they had crafted. According to him, the house I bought was a property knowingly acquired to obstruct a promised familial arrangement. He spoke as if I had committed a calculated attack, as if I had plotted to steal something precious from my sister out of spite. He painted her as the helpless victim, someone whose future stability depended on the house I had supposedly stolen. My sister sniffled dramatically, dabbing beneath her eyes though no tears appeared. My mother reached over to rest a comforting hand on her knee. My father shook his head in disappointment every time the lawyer mentioned my name. As I sat there listening, memories surfaced like ghosts. Late nights where I was told to watch my sister while my parents went out, even when I had homework. The times I received nothing more than a hurried pat on the back, while she received praise for the smallest achievements. The holidays where my gifts were practical things like clothes, while hers were expensive gadgets and gold jewelry. Every moment of being overlooked, every silent resentment, every dismissed feeling suddenly fit into place like puzzle pieces. This court case wasn't about a house. It was about the unspoken rules. She got everything. I got scraps. That was the system my parents had built and expected me to obey forever. My lawyer stood when it was our turn. She was calm, straightforward, and didn't waste time with theatrics. She explained that the house had been for sale publicly, that I had purchased it legally with my own money, that no written agreement or proof existed of any promise made to my sister. She presented documents, bank statements, timelines, facts that outshone the melodramatic accusations. When I was asked to speak, I stood up slowly. My hands weren't shaking. My voice didn't falter. I looked directly at the judge, not at my family, because they stopped feeling like my family the moment they signed their names on those papers. I bought the house because I worked for it, I said, keeping my tone steady. I had no knowledge of any promise or plan involving it. My parents never told me anything. They assume I should have known because that is how things have always been handled in my family. Plans for my future are never spoken to me, but plans for my sister's future are treated like sacred law. For the first time, my sister's expression faltered. I didn't sabotage anyone. I built something for myself, and if my family sees that as a threat, then maybe the issue isn't the house. Maybe the issue is the way they see me. The court fell silent. The judge asked a few more questions, but the case was unraveling. My parents had no evidence, only entitlement and assumptions. It took less than 10 minutes for the judge to dismiss the claim entirely. My sister gasped as if struck. My father stood abruptly, muttering under his breath. My mother's face twisted with offended disbelief. As we walked out of the courtroom, they surrounded me instantly. Angry, accusing, desperate to reassert control. But something inside me had shifted. Their voices no longer shook me. Their anger no longer wounded me. Their disappointment no longer mattered. I realized right there in that hallway that this wasn't just a legal victory. It was the first moment of my freedom, outside the courtroom. The air felt colder, sharper, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I barely had time to step aside when my father blocked my path with a fury that seemed to boil beneath his skin. His face was flushed, and for a moment I saw something unfamiliar in his eyes. Not disappointment, not anger, but something closer to desperation. My mother hovered behind him, stiff and silent, while my sister stood with her arms crossed, eyes narrowed, her pride wounded but not enough to quiet her arrogance. "You embarrassed us," my father spat, in front of strangers. In front of the judge, in front of everyone. I met his gaze without flinching. I told the truth. My mother scoffed. "You twisted it. You made us look like villains." "You didn't need my help for that," I said softly. My sister stepped forward, her chin trembling. "You stole my house. You destroyed everything we planned. You made me look pathetic. You did that on your own," I replied. "You're not a victim." Her eyes widened, as if no one had ever dared say that to her. Maybe no one had. She had been raised in a world where she was always right, always special, always protected. The idea that she might actually be accountable for something was foreign to her. My father pointed a shaking finger at me. "You think this is over. You think we'll just accept this humiliation." "It is over," I said firmly. The court said so. He took a step closer, looming over me. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay us. By attacking your sister. By disrespecting us publicly. I didn't step back this time. I didn't lower my eyes. I spent my entire life repaying debts I never owed. I said. I'm done. My mother exhaled sharply, her voice cracking between anger and disbelief. We are your parents. You owe us everything. That was the moment, the turning point I didn't know I had been heading toward my whole life. Something inside me finally settled, no longer trembling beneath their words. I understood, finally, painfully, that nothing I ever did would be enough for them unless it aligned with their expectations. I was allowed to exist only as long as I kept myself small. No, I said quietly. I don't owe you my life, and I don't owe her my future. My sister barked out a bitter laugh. You think you're better than us now. You think buying a house makes you someone? It's not the house, I said. It's the freedom, she scoffed. Please, you'll come crawling back. You always do. That's where you're wrong, I replied. Not this time. My father's face darkened as if he couldn't comprehend losing control over me. You're making a mistake, he hissed. We won't forget this. I know, I said. You never forget anything that doesn't go your way. My mother's voice softened suddenly, shifting from fury to manipulation with a frightening smoothness. We're family, she whispered. Families fight, but they stay together. Not when the fighting turns into abuse, I said. Not when love becomes a weapon. My sister's voice rose sharp and frantic. Just give me the house, then we can move on. I stared at her, at the sheer entitlement, the expectation that she could still command my life as if nothing had changed. You can't have what I worked for, I said. Not anymore. The hallway grew silent. The three of them looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, as if the obedient, apologetic version of me had suddenly vanished. Maybe I had. My father took one last step toward me, but this time it wasn't anger. It was disbelief. So what? You're just walking away. From us, yes, I said simply, because I finally realized that staying only ever hurt me. My mother shook her head slowly. You'll regret this. No, I said. I regret every year I spent trying to earn love that was never real. My sister opened her mouth, but I didn't let her finish. I turned and walked away, listening to their shocked silence echo behind me. Every step felt like peeling off another layer of weight I had carried since childhood. Every breath came easier. Every thought felt clearer. They expected me to break down. They expected tears, apologies, a last attempt to restore the balance they were used to. They expected me to fall into the same cycle again. But I didn't look back, and as the courthouse doors closed behind me, I knew with absolute certainty this was the first decision in my life that truly belonged to me. Leaving them behind felt both terrifying and liberating, like stepping into an open field after years trapped in a narrow hallway. At first, the silence was unsettling. My phone no longer buzzed with their demands, their criticisms, their carefully wrapped manipulations. I had grown so used to their constant noise that the quiet felt foreign, almost too gentle. But eventually, I learned to breathe in it, to let it settle into the corners of my new home like sunlight warming a room. The house itself became my sanctuary. Every morning I walked through it slowly, touching the walls I had painted myself, admiring the small details I had chosen with care. The living room smelled faintly of new wood and lavender. The kitchen felt bright and hopeful. The bedroom, with its soft linens and small window overlooking a tree-lined street, felt like the first place I had ever been truly safe. For the first time in my life, I had something that belonged entirely to me. No guilt, no expectations, no strings waiting to pull me back. People think revenge is loud, a dramatic storm that crashes into those who wronged you. But mine came quietly, sweetly. It came through peace, through the absence of chaos, through the simple joy of making coffee in the morning, without feeling like I needed to earn my right to exist. It came from the realization that the greatest retaliation against people who wish to control you is simply choosing not to be controlled anymore. At first, my family tried to call. The messages came in waves. My mother's initial fury softened into guilt-ridden pleas. She left long voicemails, her voice trembling as she spoke about misunderstandings and family unity. My father's messages were colder, short, clipped sentences that pretended to be concerned but were soaked with resentment. My sister alternated between rants and emotional manipulation, each message dripping with entitlement. I let them pile up without responding. Eventually, the calls slowed. Then they stopped. I found myself meeting new people, forming bonds that didn't require me to shrink, neighbors who waved when I walked outside. A coworker who invited me to weekend gatherings and introduced me to a circle of friends who laughed openly, who listened without judgment, who didn't see me through the lens of old family roles. For the first time, I felt chosen, not as an obligation, not as a background character to someone else's importance, but as a person deserving of love and care. As months passed, my life felt fuller. I decorated my front yard with flowers that bloomed wildly in spring. I learned how to cook dishes I once believed were too complicated. I hosted small dinners and filled my home with laughter. Real laughter, the kind that shakes loose the pain lodged deep in your chest. Slowly, the old wounds began to scar over. They didn't disappear, but they stopped bleeding. Meanwhile, my family began to feel the consequences of their choices. I heard fragments of their unraveling through distant relatives, through people who still lingered on the edges of my life. My sister struggled without the constant pedestal beneath her. The world outside our family wasn't built to worship her, and she stumbled under the weight of normal expectations. My parents, once united in their favoritism, began blaming each other for how everything fell apart. Their family image, so carefully crafted for years, began to crack. It wasn't my intention to punish them. I didn't need to. Life did it for me. Because when you build a family around inequality, around one child being the sun and the other being the shadow, removing the shadow leaves the whole structure exposed. Without me absorbing the anger, the guilt, the responsibility, the balance they relied on collapsed. I didn't celebrate their downfall, but I didn't regret my absence either. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sky turn gold, I realized something important. I had created a life I didn't need to escape from. A life where I didn't walk on eggshells. A life where my voice mattered. Where I mattered. The house, once the center of the storm, had become a symbol of something far greater. My freedom, my healing, my rebirth. Every wall carried proof of my resilience. Every room echoed with the quiet strength of choosing myself. My family never stayed the same after that day. But I did. I grew, I healed, I thrived. And for the first time, I understood the beauty in letting go. Because nothing stayed the same again, and for once that was exactly what I needed.